thanks for the invite, Peter, and thanks to the AIG as well. Really do have to emphasise ALS's support here. I've been involved in these grassroots organisations before. Support from organisations like the ALS make a huge difference. We really wouldn't have the outreach without them. So thank you very much. And for all of you listening, please get behind the people that support us. It's mutually beneficial. Support the supporters. So the talk tonight is going to be a little bit technical, but a lot of it's going to be around the process of discovering something new. So what we're going to be talking about is a metallogenic province, which was defined in November last year. So a bit different. We're not talking about a discovery of a deposit, something that is, we're talking about 60,000 square kilometres with what looks like a camp within it, which will hopefully therefore lead through into a deposit. So this discovery as such was made by Greenfields, the company that I'm associated with. And so you can see the main players in the screen, the four of us there, but we do have a much wider network that we draw upon, both within Greenland, which is where we focus our work, and internationally. So Greenfields is an incubator. A few of you may be aware of the term a generator, an exploration generator. We're very similar to that, but we chose the term incubator to really emphasize our difference. That is, we're not working in brownfields terrains. We're not in the business of flipping projects. We're not wheeling and dealing in real estate. We're taking new projects in remote locations and taking the first mover advantage. Part of this business model is not to hold onto the project. Now, this is specific and it relates to culture. Being an explorer at the remotest parts of the world where we operate requires a certain personality trait. You need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. We feel there's great potential right out there on the frontier. That's where the next big discoveries are going to be made. But we recognize that as such companies go from juniors and become successful, they change. So the explorer becomes into a resource definition company, that becomes a mining company. And the tolerance to uncertainty shifts radically. So when you're at the grassroots, you're all about chasing the uncertainty because that's where the prize is. You don't want to go into areas that are highly certain because that's certainly got it's very hard to discover where there's a lot of data available because most of it is negative data. So we go for uncertain areas. That's where the value lies. Once a discovery is made, uncertainty becomes risk. So mining engineers, accountants, they hate uncertainty. They want to get rid of it altogether. So very rapidly go from a culture of people that are happy to work with uncertainty, being surrounded and overwhelmed by people that can't tolerate it. They mustn't. That is, the organization demands that. So you end up with a situation where really good teams end up leaving. That's a great waste because it takes a lot of years, a lot of effort to build up this expertise to be good at exploration. And we don't want exploration to become the sort of side note or forgotten entity in what becomes a successful company. So we recognize that as the founders or discoverers of a deposit, at some stage we need to pass this on rather than reinvent the company and suddenly call ourselves miners. So we aim to preserve a culture. So the people involved primarily in defining this metallogenic belt called Kifani-Susek in northern Greenland is Joel Bergen and myself. Now, we're both generalists. We're geos, sure, but we're not pointy-end geos. We take a leaf out of The Good Judgment Project by Phil Tetlock. If you ever get a chance, dig into it. It's really quite interesting. What Phil Tetlock's research showed that was generalists who can gather together all different facets of information can outperform specialist teams using inside information. So this originally came out of CIA work, where a bunch of generalists and the public were able to beat the CIA specialists with confidential information systematically every single time. That's not by fluke. So we want to be not explorers, because we want to be good predictors, good forecasters. To be an explorer, you just need to go there first. We want to make sure that there is something there first. So we're in the game of prediction, which is why I go on about the Good Judgment Project. My background, I've done a fair bit of work in project evaluation. That combines my mine geology and my economics. I've used that to jump into the deepest, furthest fringe of exploration, Greenfields exploration. And it works. And it works because economics is all about systems. So it's not that hard to take systems thinking and apply it to minerals systems thinking. They're complementary. You look at Joel, see where's he worked before. No, he's looked at a couple of geological surveys. Cool. Academic type as well. Sort of. Joel is with us because he, straight out of uni, tried to set up his own exploration company. He's an entrepreneur. That's awesome. He's also a mountaineer. So between those two things, I see a person that is comfortable being uncomfortable. That's really important for exploration, because we need someone that can make decisions based on sparse data and quickly. And those decisions can have a consequence. So we'll probably both lean towards being adventure sports type persons and generalists. So Greenfields it was established in 2017, and we've been working on Greenland since that time. We've done a fair bit during that time. We are a private company. We are a public company that is unlisted. So the difference between private and public being the level of rigor we apply to our corporate compliance. We could easily be a PTY Ltd, private company, and not have to do annual audits, for example. But we make the effort to be a limited company and we're doing our annual audits. So we hold ourselves to a higher standard than we need to. That's deliberate. It's just you can't trade our shares, so we are unlisted. Back in 2017, 2018, the world was a different place. Exploration was verboten, on the nose. Don't go there. The dirtiest word you could use was nickel. Don't utter that word. Obviously, the world's changed. So we identified our first project called the Frontier on the east coast of Greenland. And when we looked at this, this thing belongs in the portfolio of a major. So put our foot on it. We then decided, okay, how are we going to fund it? Because the project was too good to just ignore and leave and hope for a better day within the funding world. So we jumped into something that no one's done in the world before, and that was crowdfund an unlisted exploration company. I don't think anyone else in the world has done that since then, so I think we still hold it. As it turned out, we managed to land a joint venture with IGO Limited on that project. And we were out in the field in 2018. So quite successful straight off the bat. So I've done a couple of seasons out in the field since then. We managed to secure physical samples from all over Greenland. So we built up our capacity and ability and our technical advantage in exploring Greenland. We made a few friends along the way as well. We did this because we would operate cleanly. and very collaboratively. In 2019, we left our campsite cleaner than when we found it, because we found a whole bunch of old oil drums lying around. So no, we'll pick that up on our own cost and get rid of it. We also restocked some huts for military personnel. So these were emergency huts they couldn't access. We ended up getting an award for being the Greenlander Explorer of the Year in 2019. So after a couple of seasons and 7 weeks in the field, IGO earned its 51% interest in the project and then moved to drilling. So we were successful on that project. So the timing was right for us to do it all over again, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. So what you can see on this screen here is the Frontier project. This is one that we joint ventured. Just to give a sense of the location of where it is, it's close to Iceland. So that's our entry route into the country. And there's some infrastructure in the area that we believe launch off there. There's some nice numbers coming out of that. So we're looking forward to drilling that fairly soon. A new project called Arctic Rift Copper is located further north. We built on our understanding of the East Coast to work our way up north and to develop and build on our existing knowledge. And we identified this, we called it ARC, as in electric arc. The historical results were pretty easy. There's some eye-popping copper grades there, mostly in copper sulfides, but also some interesting notes about native copper that was lying around on surface. So that was a good enough reason to hone in on this area. So much of the east coast of Greenland and North Greenland is dominated by sediments. So deposit model thinking, sedimentary hosted copper or various subsets of that. But we didn't jump straight into that. We actually took a broader picture. So we like to use mineral systems thinking. So the first thing that I personally look for is energy. Where is the energy coming from? So the analogy can be having all the ingredients to a cake, and you put it in the oven, but if there's no energy going to that oven, nothing's going to happen. So for me, that's the first thing I look for. It doesn't matter what the sediments look like, whether they've got salts in them or not, so where can the energy come from? A clue came from understanding the lithospheric architecture. So we know there's a lithospheric asthenospheric boundary running more or less east-west across the top of Greenland. Cool. But when you pull in simple things like Google Earth, you can actually see a great big fracture zone heading straight into our license area, this great big fjord system. It's no coincidence. So this is an ultra slow spreading ridge. It's dislocated Svalbard, which is over on the northeast from above Greenland. So this looks like a triple junction, just 3 points intersecting. Cool. Is it real or is it just apparent? Well, we know that the Icelandic mantle plume started to the north of Ellesmere Island and worked its way underneath Greenland and popped out where it is to present-day Iceland and generated some really interesting looking magmatic nickel targets along the way. Okay, so that's an energy of that's a source of energy and fluids, albeit magmatic. So that was 80 to 100 million years ago. If you go back even further, so I don't know, 1.3 billion years ago, there was also a mantle plume there in this region, and it was to the northeast. So suddenly you've got two mantle plumes recorded in the rocks occurring very close by to each other, near what looks like a triple junction. Is that coincidence? Seems like a bit much. Okay, cool. So we've got magmatic energy potential going in there. All right, I like that. I'll have a look at this area in greater detail. We also have two orogenic events running up and down the east coast. So one is about 1,250 million years ago, and the other one is the Caledonian origin, about 400 million years ago, let's call it. And more or less overlap. So this mountain building collisional events can create energy through uplift and dewatering. So there's another source of fluid and energy. Cool. There's lots going on here. So it's a good place to look. So this is before even thinking about, oh, I want to test sediment-hosted copper, because it could be a magmatic system that I end up with. I'm just looking for first order ingredients. This is a good place to look for minerals, full stop. Now, there are some subsequent orogenic events which run across the top of Greenland. The Eurekain deformation is one of them, which resulted in Svalbard being shunted to where it is presently today. And there's another one which more or less overlaps with it, very poorly constrained, poorly reported, not much evidence for it, called the Ellesmerian origin. And this was actually, the Ellesmerian origin is important to understanding the history of northern Greenland and how we ended up defining a new Metallogenic Belt. Province, sorry. So it's not that mineralization wasn't known to be in the area already. We already knew that the Citronen zinc deposit was there. This is historically described to being a SEDEX deposit. It's big. They haven't found the bottom of it. There's no need to. They've got enough mineralization. It's a nice thing. We know there's heading south towards our project area. There's a bunch of MPT prospects. When you get into ARC, around 2010, there was an exploration company that found copper sulfides hosted in sediments near Proterozoic sediments. Oh, cool. That sounds very much like a copper belt. Very superficial, of course. But there's also something very curious, this basaltic hosted copper, which has had very little work done on it. So this is what it looks like. It's a bit of a peninsula inside a fjord system. So the central grey area there is basalts. To the east, you've got Neoproterozoic sediments. And to the west, you've got Paleo to Mesoproterozoic sediments that have been intruded by these really weird intrusions coming out of the basement. Some are dolomites. Some of them are called rhyosemites. What is a rhyosemite? It's basically a liquefied sandstone. And they're weird because wherever you see a rhyosemite, they are always flanked by dolerites. Where the dolerites stop flanking the rhyosemites, says the rhyosemite, it suddenly freezes in situ. So what it looks like happened here was it was instantly quenched once the dolerite stopped acting as a permeable layer and dumped volatiles into the system. So gases, liquids, that's exciting because that is dumping energy and ingredients into a mineral system really, really quickly. We don't want slow processes. I'm not a fan of some of these models where you see recirculating fluids, depositing things. The more and more we look at deposits, the more that evidence that we find that these things happen fast. So what are the fast events? This is potentially one of them. So you've seen the geology. This is the geochem. We don't have mountains of data. It's one of the least explored parts of the world. So what we have is really good quality, but it is sparse data. And it's not homogeneous in how it's distributed. There's some really sexy numbers in there. So that's what lit us up, lights up the eyes and honed our eyes, that you don't get numbers like that as a fluke. So the basalts, these are Mesoproterozoic, called zigzag belt. and they're really expensive. So it's basically a large igneous province. At surface, it covers 10,000 square kilometres, but we know that 130 kilometres to the north, near the citron and zinc deposit, they pop up again. So 10,000 square kilometres is a gross underestimate. Why do we care? The zigzag dale basalts act as an excellent source of copper. So we've got a big potential source rock here. It also happens to be a potential host. So it's cool. We have large-scale processes, so triple junctions, orogenesis, maybe the mantle plumes, big source rocks. Cool. That's what you want to see for a big system. And we're all about finding big systems. Emanating out of the basalts are faults, subvertical. So it's called the discovery zone. We didn't call it that. I think that credit goes to the previous explorers. And there's at least 3 faults outcropping at surface, extending for a couple of kilometers before they dip under moraine. They're really, really interesting. They're full of potassium, and they've got some really strong mineralization in them. So within the discovery zone faults, you've got what's called black earth. So this is where 40% of the mass of the sandstone has been replaced by these potassic minerals. 40% of the sandstone has been replaced. And get some stonking copper grades out of that, with strong silver as well. So we know the fluids that pass through there have been really intense and scorched the hell out of things. Cool. That sounds like a fast system to me. So here's some more grades. What's interesting is that the basalts that these discovery zones come out of display native copper, as well as copper sulfides in the form of chalcocite. So that the photo you can see there is of an oxidized, weathered version of the chalcocite-bearing basalt. So that the source rock is a host. It's got decent grade in it. Cool. Almost no exploration has been done on this. So looking into this area, yeah, we could do the old deposit model, stereotyping. So we've got SEDEX to the north, then we've got MVTs, then we've got SedimentHosted, maybe it's copper belt type. We've also got under that basaltic copper. It's a lot of different discrete lumps of information that don't fit well together. Deposit models are stereotypes. Only the biggest and best ever get studied, and then they get applied to everything else. Stereotypes are terrible predictors. Easy to apply, but create far too many false positives. But the power of their communication is really hard to challenge. You just drop a name, oh, it's copper belt. It looks like the copper belt. And every broker will know what you're talking about, whether they know anything about geology or not. So that's the power of deposit models. And it's hard to step away from that because it's so easy to communicate. Now, I don't need to, and I don't want to go into great detail about why mineral systems and what mineral systems thinking is and how it's better. It's more important to focus on that while it is a much better predictor, it's really hard to communicate. And mineral systems is more about understanding the physics of a region and driving it through to the deposit, rather than looking at the descriptive end member, the chemistry of deposit models. So it's actually quite easy as geoscientists to apply and to understand, really hard to communicate. So we could have done the classic thing of looked at this area, looked at those grades, and that sucked us in and go, what is this? All right, it's a sediment-hosted deposit model of whatever subtype. Cool. We've got passive margin sediments, basalts, then intractonic sediments. So we can use the deposit model very nicely on this. Tick. We could then look at the SEDEX prior deposit that's been prior discovered. So yeah, this is driven by the Ellesmerian orogeny. Cool. That would have driven us to explore east-west. Now that's if we're jumping out and waving our hands and saying this is the copper belt. A more correct version is to say, no, this is basaltic copper. Because in the basaltic hosted copper systems, which you see in Michigan and Keweenaw Peninsula, they're basalts that are full of native copper, and they also have sediment chalcocite dominated sediment hosted sulfidic sediments. The Keweenaw Peninsula is really interesting. It's more or less been forgotten from the collective memory. It was mined from the late 1800s sometime through to about just before the Second World War. The Keweenaw Peninsula contains about 10 million tons of contained copper, 10 million tons. So after the Copper Belt and the Kupferschiefer, this is the third biggest system on the planet. There's a lot of metal there for the sediment hosted systems. What I find curious is that even though they were mining these things through the Depression, that was its peak, was during a terrible time, they mined this stuff down to 1.6 kilometers below surface over 100 years ago. That's a big deal. They're actually mining this about 9,500, nearly 10,000 years ago, artisanally. But functionally, it's extinct. It's gone from the collective memory. So while technically it's more correct to say, arc looks like basaltic copper in Michigan, you say that to a broker using a blank space stare. So, okay, not as good to communicate. So do we go back to the copper belt analogy? No. Because if we did, then we end up blinking ourselves, and we would have explored east-west. That's been tried before, and it was okay. It wasn't great. The discovery zone's fantastic, but the follow-up going further along strike the sediments didn't work. We could have looked at the Ellesmerian and used that as the basis for exploring east-west. Problem is, the Ellesmerian may never have existed in North Greenland. There's no structural evidence in rocks of the right age for its existence. But isotopic data doesn't show any evidence of fluid flow around this time either. Eek. So suddenly the deposit models using SEDEX and the Ellesmerian falling over and forcing us to explore east-west. Fortunately, we didn't do that. Being a systems thinker, we decided to be systematic. So we are very systematic in how we approach. That's from an organizational level through to project implementation and our daily functions as well. So yes, we use mineral systems, but we are also very systematic in reading and recording everything that we do. And we don't just write things down, we actually cite where it comes from and challenge each other. So this is really, really powerful. So we don't like writing reports for the sake of writing reports, do not whatsoever. But the process of writing something that looks like a PhD thesis is incredibly powerful when you step into a terrain like this where there's been few before. Because you start off looking at the major ingredients, the first order ingredients, the orogenesis. Did it exist? Which way could have made fluid flow? And then working down to a prospect level. By citing something, it also forces you to fact check everything. So we could have quite easily gone, yep, okay, the previous groups think everything is driven by the Ellesmerian, so we're going to do that. But we fact checked everything, going back to original sources. And as we were working down in resolution, we're always going back up and going, does this make sense? What we're seeing down at a project level within the license, or even a prospect within the license, into the larger framework. So we did a document for this where we wrote it out. This document is 56,000 words long, 152 pages. Like I said, we don't take pleasure out of this, but it was actually really exciting. It was exciting because we were making knowledge discoveries on a daily basis. So Joel and I were tag teaming on this project. It wasn't a case of one person goes off and works on it for 1 or 2 weeks and then we reconvene. It was daily. We're able to do this because Joel lives in Poland. So we were able to work around the clock. So we wrote this document and we wrote it to the requirements of the Valmin code using an NI43101 template. And that's just because everyone's used to seeing it. But it's also a good way of channeling the thought process. We referenced everything. And we didn't pretend that we knew the answer from the outset. We started off just taking the big picture of ingredients, putting them out there, documenting everything, and then letting it fall together, fit together at the end. Because Joel lives in Poland, we had to do a handover every day. What happened organically out of this was we ended up doing a daily peer review. I'd see Joel's edits overnight, see what he's writing, see what he's thinking, and I'd challenge it. Okay, back that statement up. Where did that come from? Could this alternative interpretation of hold true? And he'd do exactly the same back to me. So Joel's 15-something years my junior, but it was a two-way process. So very flat organizational structure. So we kept each other honest. From the outset, Greenfields has never had a fancy corporate office. We all work from home. We never saw the need for the expense. We trust people because we keep a very small, tight-knit, focused team that works to deliverables, not punch cards and hours. So we can save money. This led us to having a very distributed network. We do all our comms through apps. Emails, that's very formal for us. We rarely send emails, especially internally. So in the media lately, we've seen these comments about people getting upset that they're getting emails or text messages from their bosses at all strange hours. Well, why are you getting text messages? Who uses text messages still? They should be using apps because you can turn notifications off. So we've always been distributed, and even though we're spread across the world, we've got colleagues in Greenland that we work with, we're chatting constantly. So there's a constant review, constant dialogue, constant challenging, and it was exciting. This was fun. So report writing became fun because we were not giving each other a hard time, but we were actually enriching each other's learning constantly. So one of my favorite things I would do every morning was wake up and go, pick up my phone. What's the latest review say? Cool. We actually ended up formalizing it to the daily learnings. So on Slack, you can have, which is our app, you can have various channels, and we have a daily learnings channel in there where we put in, hey, I've read this paper, and it might be geological, or it might be something about Arctic apparel, or it can be anything. It's like, this is what I learned today. And that was really good for keeping check on each other's rates of learning, where we are learning. More often than not, we'd learn from the other person's learning as well. Going, oh, cool. Yeah, I didn't know that. Or I can actually make your learning even better by adding this little facet. So we shared knowledge internally. As we wrote this behemoth of a document, we shared it. We did closed circle sharing with colleagues and people that we thought should be aware. And that was cool. Nothing to hide. We got positive feedback, constructive feedback that made our work better. So we didn't keep this document internal. We actually ended up putting it entirely in the public domain. We put it on ResearchGate, which is a bit more geared towards the academics. But then we put it out there to really focus our own minds. It's not necessarily about some hippie thing about free knowledge to everyone. When you know that you're going to put a document, a detailed technical document like what we did on ARC in the public domain, you make the extra effort. So it's actually a little trick for keeping yourself honest, because you don't want some troll out there coming out and picking holes in it. So we published this document in November last year. By the end of December, we were in the top 1% of most read articles on ResearchGate. That was a big deal, because on ResearchGate, we're up against articles that are published by Nate in the journal Nature. Big hitters like that. We've got the media and all sorts behind them. So we got some traction out of this. Cool. And as present date, we're in the top 9% of all time on ResearchGate. It's not bad for 135 million documents that have been uploaded. So what's different about our technical report isn't just that we put everything that we knew out there at a time. So this is what we knew at the day of publication. It's actually an internal reference document. Joel and I probably open this up every day, every second day, just to go, oh, what was that thing that we wrote about that place and who wrote it? Ah, there it is. It's an internal reference document that we've shared. But it's been incredibly powerful for us. So it's not because we like writing reports. It's like we have a reference document. We use it a lot. Because when you've got an entire province, there's a lot of information, a lot of papers that you need to keep in mind. In our report, we went as far as to put a confidence level on our understanding of the mineral system in terms of actual percentages. And this is fairly easy to do using subjective probabilities of the language that we use. And we go through the key components of the mineral system. How confident are we in each of these aspects? Now, this is not the same as the probability of a deposit. This is our understanding of a system. And you come out with a percentage. This is very much heading towards what they do in petroleum, where you've got your P10s and your P90 probabilities. It's their way of describing something that's quite complex mathematically. That is where I think mineral systems can start eroding, nudging aside deposit models. Because deposit models, being stereotypes, inherently wrong, are really easy to communicate. But using probabilities is a way we can start, start nudging away that what is the probability? That's something that brokers or whoever is going to understand. What is the 90% probability? What's the 10% probability? What does that look like? So working towards that. We also know that the day that we published this document, acknowledged on that day, we were wrong. Because knowledge, this is a living document. We are continuously finding more information to add. So we actually put it out there. This is what we don't fully understand. So this is the certainty of our system. It's pretty certain for a frontier. And then these are the main areas that we want to work on to tighten that up. And we do this explicitly so that we know where to improve our system's thinking. Because if we can understand the system, we can be much better at prediction. Where is the deposit? As far as our opinion, we've got Metallogenic Belt. We've licensed a mineral camp. We think we know where there's a deposit, but we want to know where there's more deposits within this camp. That's why we want to know, why we want to be able to refine our prediction. We could just waltz out there and start drilling tomorrow if it was physically possible and borders allowing and the like. But we want to be successful, repeatable, successful. there's a lot of intellectual honesty that goes into this. The presence of copper is blatantly obvious. So that's you don't have to argue about that too much. So what did we find? Okay, so historically, what people used to think about North Greenland was that the Elsevier ran east-west and generated the SedimentHosted deposits and the like. We found that, well, there was no evidence for the Elsevier ever happening. Instead, we found that through the use of isotopes, that there's a really strong flow of fluid from east to west, driven by the orogenic events running north-south along the coast. So literally 90 degrees to the historical interpretation of what was going on in North Greenland. We fundamentally rotated the map. When we did this, we could see the isotopes lined up. We could see the temperature gradients of the fluids lined up. Now, there's not a lot of data up there. There's enough to make things confusing. And suddenly all the pieces fell in together. So, wow, all this data where people were previously arguing and discounting the previous work, actually it was all correct. And the isotopes was a really interesting case. Now, in my 20-something years experience, I've never really been interested in geochronology. Yeah, whatever. I'd make a note of it and never apply it. But it was fundamental. And it was really interesting because you see all these conflicting dates and none of them made any sense. And the authors are saying, oh, yeah, look, we can explain this by the loss of strontium offsetting, which resulted in anomalies in our rubidium strontium measurements. But we recognize this has never been reported anywhere else in the world. When you start getting to complex arguments like that, for me, it's a bit of a red flag. As it turned out, all the historical results, well, 99% of them were actually correct. It's just how our understanding of them had changed. We also recognized that there was, aside from the Caledonian, which dominates the scene there was something much deeper, this Elsevierian orogeny. And that may have been the cause of the native copper, the basalts. Again, because this comes down to a dating thing, because we see alteration through layers in the basalts and age overprinting. So it may have been two belts, two events overlapping each other. Does lightning strike twice in the same spot? In geology? Yep. Because there's a fundamental reason for it to do so, because there's a lightning rod sticking out of the ground. So this might be the triple junction or whatever it is, but lightning is always going to strike it. So we could have two metallogenic events occurring. 90 degrees what's been historically reported. Cool, so this allowed us to sketch around 60,000 square kilometers of North Greenland and say this is the Metallogenic Belt. Further to the west, fluids are probably too cool and there's nothing there. So that was a bit of fun. It's not too often that you get to say you define an entire metallogenic belt. Finding a deposit's more common, a lot more sexy too. But finding the right address, defining the belt is the first step towards discovery, certainly for a company like us. 60,000 square kilometers is too huge. So what did we pick up on? By being that really thorough reader of a report and writer of a report, we picked up on the stream sediments, and that on one side of the fjord is dominated by titanium magnetite, and on the other, in our license area, we got hematite. Something has changed. That hematite is where you see the native copper, and the copper sulfides. Okay. As we start digging into things, start looking in layers in the basalt, going, oh, some of these layers are anomalous in rare earths and cerium. Why do we care about cerium? Well, it's a way of converting hematite, magnetite to hematite in the absence of a redox transition, redox-independent hematization. This is something we see in IOCGs, another deposit model. IOCG is just a deeper, hotter version of SedimentHosted system further up. Same process is involved though, as far as I'm concerned. So we could throw out the word ICG. It's not an ICG, it's just a mineral system. So through all these things, we're able to define 60,000 square kilometre area within which we found an area of anomalism in the hematite. So having that where the hematite is, that 80% of the stream sediment samples contain native copper. 80%. That's a lot of native copper kicking around. That's not accidental. So we ended up calling the metallogenic belt Kifani-Susek, which means independence in West Greenlandic, but it's named after the fjord. Look, I would have loved to have called it the John Metallogenic Province, but there are conventions we have to follow, and it's probably not okay to sort of perpetuate colonial names and the like, so we had to go with Kifani-Susek. Writing the report was also interesting that we had so much anomalism in this one spot within our license. We got topographic, we've got geochemical, we've got magnetic, electromagnetic, gravity. There's only so many times you can say the word anomaly or coincident anomaly, and this report's really hard to read. So we ended up having to come up with a new term, and we call it singularity, a place where everything's different. So this multiple anomaly location is called the minute singularity. So we had to come up with our own term, just so we could communicate effectively. So flipping to the junior explorer stuff, this is why we get excited. 4.5 meters to going a couple of percent, the black earth material within fault zones that are up to 25 meters, 20 something meters wide over multiple kilometers, containing copper within the broader faults with intense alteration. We find kilogram nuggets of native copper lying around at surface. That's actually quite common. Kilogram nuggets of native copper. That's really exciting because we go to the analog of Michigan, the Keweenaw Peninsula. There they mined 500 kilogram lumps of native copper out of what they call fissures. So this is the fissures emanate out of the broader native copper bearing basalts, and this is where it's focused really fast. So fast and intense precipitation of native copper, big lumps. We're seeing big lumps. That's no what? Accident. That's right next to the basalt. We know there's copper in the basalts because we see it in the alteration. We see that there's chalcocite in the basalts as well. So maybe this is a geochemical gradient. So that could be the single orogenesis theory, that we're going from hematite to native copper to chalcocite, bornite to chalcopyrite. We can see that in the area, or whether it's a two-stage process. Both have evidence to back them up. We just don't have the smoking gun. We also know that while we've got these faults exposed at surface, they've only been subject to chipping and a few trenches. But it looks like it goes off into the strata as well, and some decent numbers in there. So really exciting stuff at surface. So as a company, that's something that we can move on really, really quickly. We'll be running around with metal detectors, picking up lumps of copper. We're going to be prospecting on that. On the faults, we'll be spending a bit of time on sending those, getting those ready for drilling in the near term. So we feel that we'll probably be ready in our second field season to drill. They're moving really, really fast. It's a bit like what we did with Frontier. 7 weeks out in the field, doing recon with a helicopter to move to drilling really fast. And what looks to be a really big system. Massive source rocks, big area, big fluid flows, interesting things going on in the basement with more than just anomalism at surface. Cool, John. Right here in the north, way north, sits running even further up north than us, and they've done all the studies to show that yes, you can do shipping there. You can. It is viable. But that's an old study. The Arctic is changing really fast. It's brutal. It really, really is. But in the next 15 years, we're going to have a blue water event in the Arctic that is no sea ice. It doesn't matter what we do. If we stopped carbon emissions today, the momentum is such that that's still going to happen. It's the brutal, brutal reality. So the knee jerk there is, oh, we shouldn't mine there. No, this is a moonscape. If you're going to mine anywhere so that we can fix the areas before, we can create a cleaner environment, cleaner economy, we should be mining the moonscapes rather than in the jungles. We don't want to disturb biomass because it almost is none up there. This is what it looked like. This is the central license area 40 years ago. A long time ago. And it's like this because it's an inner fjord system. Inner fjords are really, really dry, true deserts. Go up to the coast and you get precipitation and moisture in the air, and that's where you get those big snow dumps. Not in our license area. Sure, you get snow, but it's mostly thin and just kind of blows around, rolls around through winter. Bitterly cold, but it's dry. So you can sort of forget the ideas of these snow blizzards and walking through the snow along a guide rope so I don't get lost. It's not like that. And as you've seen through this spiral, the sea covers reduced dramatically. So the coastal access is improving dramatically within the next even 5 to 10 years. That's going to affect the project area. This is opening up. So we've made our mark on Greenland. We've changed how the North is interpreted. So we're pretty proud of that. We're a little team. We're very specialized by being generalists. And we were able to achieve that because we've been systematic across the value chain. Dissociated company, working across time zones, where we're outcomes focused rather than worrying about clocking in, clocking out. We have a daily peer review process when writing the document. So that's super high intensity. It really, really is. So every sentence has been read 3 or 4 times, if not more. And it's a flat management structure. So Joel was giving it to me as good as I was giving it to him. And we grew calluses. Any sensitivity to being criticized is you get used to it. So no, this is actually constructive. This is really valuable. It's actually exciting. It makes report writing interesting and something you want to do, which is bizarre because I've done my PhD and it was horrible. Never want to do that again. But this is really, really fun. And the excitement is palpable. And when people are excited, they perform at their best. They exceed their prior highs. We put it out in the public. We got really useful feedback. Our report is so much better because of it. We put a big shout out to Chris Kirkland because he does a lot of work with geochronology, and we had this sort of theory around dating and things, and said, "Oh, look, have you read these papers?" And so, "Oh, wow, that was the evidence to our theory. We just proved that. Fantastic, thank you, Chris." And we've, as much as possible, tried to get rid of stereotypes. They're the easiest thing to do. This is a copper belt or a Michigan. If we'd done that, we would have looked at the wrong things and come out to the wrong conclusions. So it's pretty exciting. It's not often you get to define a metallogenic belt, but we feel like this is the first step to discovery. We've got a camp scale license, target within it, and we've got walk up targets to go. So for us, I guess that the proof in the pudding will be the first field season when we're going out there and really testing it, followed by drilling, and hopefully it's going to be the deposit in the second year. So I'll now open up to the floor, and I'll let you take over there, Peter.
Thanks, John, for that excellent talk. I just asked people to get their questions in. There's a couple there, and I noticed there are a few people with hands up. If you have a question, please put it in the Q&A panel, and we'll get to those. Fortunately, I'm always in the position to go first, so I will go first. There's the old saying that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, and it's something that you aren't doing because you've obviously gone about doing things in a different way. How hard is it to break from that mold, given that most exploration companies around the world, regardless of where they're based and what they're looking for, tend to do the same thing over and over again?
A couple of aspects there. I guess as an unlisted company, we can focus on technical work. So we don't have to pander to news flow on a daily basis. Like, we need to just tune out information to the investor community. So we were free of that shackle. So that helps. So we can focus on the technical work. Also working in the area of sparse data with a few other players around, it is open to new interpretation. It'd be really hard for us to walk into somewhere in Australia and repeat this, simply because the knowledge gap is so huge. So it was almost a privilege and an honour to be able to go to this area and move the scientific bar by a big margin. So that comes into play, definitely. As individuals, we're naturally curious as well, but where we're playing and how we're structured allowed us to break the rules as such.
Excellent. Before I get into my next question, I'll ask one from the floor. Alan Riles asks, and I suspect it might be a little bit early, but how is the metallurgy shaping up?
Yeah, too early on that one. So we know we've got native copper. So all together, and there's actual deposit. That should be a gravity circuit, or some of these pre-concentration methods that are available, Tomra ore sorters and the like. So we see that the sulfides look fairly simple. It's mostly chalcocite, but there is a bronchite, I think it is. There's in there a potassic one as well. So we don't have geometallurgical data yet, but it's certainly something that we want to work on the first year, actually. So we're looking at using backpack drills just to get core. Only needs about 18 centimeters long, 41 mil, so between BQ and NQ, upon which we can start doing this non-destructive 3D imaging of core. So we can start working on a geometallurgy from day one, rather than just going, hey, let's throw it into destructive assay and throw it into a bath of whatever acids, and it's gone. So that's the last thing we want to do. We actually want to get much core-like material as we can from the get-go. So that's not just for geometallurgy, it's for repeatability of assays, so that's QA/QC. It gives structural information, it gives distribution of the particles, a whole host of things that we can look at the alteration, not just raw assay numbers. So quite excited running through that, actually. So we propose using these backpack drills instead of just rock chipping, because we can just do so much more with it, including geometallurgy.
Yeah. And are you seeing other things other than copper, or is it pretty much just copper only in terms of economic potential?
Yeah. Look, the only one that we've got strong indications for is copper and silver, but the setting is right for magmatic nickel, 100%. Just there's been virtually no work done on it, so it's hard to say that it's there. We'll be looking for it. We'll be looking at these intrusions. We know in Michigan that it's like that you got the Eagle nickel deposit there. Same setting. It's just around like 40 k's from the Quina Peninsula. These intracontronic rifts. You get these magmas coming up. It is the right setting for Norilsk type. We've got the gypsum-bearing sediments and the like to mingle with it, the magmas. We know there is, in the few samples available, that there is depletion of nickel in some of the samples. So it's like, where is that nickel gone? Has it been sucked into something else? So that's as much as we've got, but something that we'll be looking at in the first field season. So that'll probably be next year, borders permitting.
Okay, and I think we're pretty much on time here, so I'll just squeeze in one more question. You've gone through a fairly rigorous process to get to where you are at the moment, obviously with the to and froing and questioning everything you see and do. Is there a risk that you end up with a bit of paralysis there when it comes to actually targeting, that you get to this process where you're just constantly questioning yourselves and going through, trying to get that confidence level up higher and higher before you actually test it?
The answer is no. So I flipped from doing technical work in January. So we did a bit of mopping up with the report and including subsequent data after November, then sort of showing it to the world. For the next 3 months, I was working on logistics, and now I'm working on corporate style work. I've still got Joel working in the background, and his mandate is to really tighten up the project level targeting. So we've been spending a lot of time on understanding the structure, so where these fluids going, because we're aiming for these fissures like we saw in Michigan, where you get these 500 kilogram lumps of copper. So we've set up the mineral system, and now we are focused within the license. We're bringing all those elements into play, but we're also improving the lithological mapping, because there are differences to what's published, just using satellite imagery and the like. So what we're doing now is preparing for that first field season. So that is logistics. How can we do things cheaper, easier, safer? And how can we do it quicker so we're not messing around in the field? So that's where Joel's fitting into the logistics side of things. So a day saved in the field is worth a lot of money up there, because you only get a limited window. So I'll head off the question there, how much time to get in the field? Depends on what you want to do. So physically, we can get out there about 1st of May. It's warm enough, so worst it'll be -10. Then the melt season starts, so it's above 0 at the end of May. Things get a bit hard when things are melting because airstrips are slushy and the like, and you get water on the frozen fjords. Fjords then open up in August, and you can get ships in. So if you're not worried about a bit of snow on ground, you can be up there for pushing it 5 months, go in over the ice, and then pull up by ship in September sometime. But it depends how particular you are. So we're interested in using passive seismic. So, and that deployment of passive seismic sensors works really well with the snow, because you just drive along, check them off the side, keep going, and they can sit on the snow nice and stable and listen for 30 days. Then we drive back and pick them up again. So we want to use passive seismic to do the 3D imaging of the subsurface on a big scale. Within that, over the discovery zone, we want to use 3D IP, and that doesn't work so great with snow cover. So you have to basically dig away the snow and put it on the ground. So that works best at the end of the season. But there's a lot of plateaus and cliffs there, so we can go throughout any of that period, that 4 or 5 month period, and do a lot of hyperspectral imaging of the cliffs, looking for alteration. But we're really just chasing the fluids. So yeah, we can do we can have a long field season depending on the work program.
Oh, fantastic. Well, the Canadians have proved you can work 365 days a year if you really, really want to. So it can be done. We've reached our time limit, and we don't want to outstay our welcome. So on behalf of the AIG and ALS, I'd like to take the moment to thank you, John, and wish Greenfields and yourself the best of luck.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.